Hey, thanks for joining another podcast. And we're doing this one by audio, but I appreciate PeggyAnn McConnochie from Alaska who's joining. There's some really cool things about PeggyAnn I'll mention, but thank you so much.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you for inviting me to help you out today.
A couple of things. You received in one of NAR's very high awards, the Distinguished Realtor Award, correct?
Distinguished Service Award.
Service Award,
Service
yeah.
Award, yeah, the DSA.
Distinguished Service Award, which is a great honor, and so congratulations. And then last year, you received a big award from the DREI, part of REIA, the Real Estate Educators Association, which was the Mark Barker Lift Me Up Award, so which was cool. So, yeah. So I wanted to talk to PeggyAnn. Our series is on the DREI and things to know and keep in mind when you're doing the DREI. First of all, I'd love for you to just tell everybody what got you interested. Let's go back. What got you interested in REIA, and then talk about what got you interested in getting your DREI.
Oh my. Well, first, I got a phone call from a dear friend of mine, Gail Lyons, who is a DREI. She's a DREI emeritus, and said, hey, there's this group called the Real Estate Educators Association, and you teach, I teach, I think you should come. So I came with Gail and joined. I joined because it was the first opportunity I've ever had to come to a meeting where everybody basically did the same thing I did. And it was amazing to be able to share experiences, positives and negatives, to be able to get information on how to be better at what we do. And Gail started talking to me about this DREI thing she had and what it meant to her and how it helped her be a better instructor. And I thought, okay, instructing wasn't my original profession. I was kind of thrown into this whole education thing, and I thought, well, it's probably time for me to figure out how to really do it right. And so I embarked one time on getting my DREI. For crazy reasons, I dropped out of REIA, and then Gail called me up again and said, look, you really got to come back. So I did. And Gail said, you've got to start and get that DREI over with. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to start from the very beginning, because they had rewritten the DREI program. And so I started from the beginning, which was going through a mentorship program where you were learning, time by time, 2 times a month, more about the specifics on how to do it and why to do it and where it came from, and paying attention to learners and all these GAPE rules that you're supposed to know. You have to pass a test, and then you had to take a video, which personally I was scared to death about doing. But I said to myself, if I really want to do this, if I really want to be better about what I want to do in my life, which is educating and being good at it and being people want to take classes from me, I should really learn more about it. So I threw myself into it, finally submitted my video, got approved, and ever since then, I've learned something very interesting. When you originally start out getting this process going of getting your DREI, you think, once I get it, I'm done. I have it, and I will be the best that I possibly can be. And then you get it, and then you learn, no, this is just the start of my journey. And that every single day after that, now I have a different level, a different standard to which I have to meet every single time I teach. So it's made me very humble about the fact I do not know everything, but it's made me better at understanding how to do what I do better, where I need to perfect, and more importantly, I think it makes sure that the people who do decide to take classes from me are getting a far better product than they got before I became a DREI. So I'm big into the process. It's not something, it's just about seat time. It's about something where you learn, you do, you practice, you show what you've learned, and then hopefully you get your DREI. Sometimes you don't get it the first tryout, but this is a PhD, if you will, in education. And I think it's worth every single moment I spend in it. And more importantly, it's important to constantly remember this is just the start of your learning journey. It's not the end, which I think is pretty dang exciting.
Yeah, I think that's a great explanation. And I've seen you speak, and you you have such a polished, wonderful presentation. But like you said, sometimes we kind of think we're doing okay, but then when you go through the DREI program, it opens your eyes to how much potential you can have.
Potential, and it helps really hone in, depending upon where you're teaching and what you're teaching, on how to do it better, because what I constantly rap about is it's not about us. It's about the product and how it's received by the students in the class. Because if we don't do it in a way where the students in the class, no matter where they're coming from, whatever point in life they're coming from, if they're not enjoying it, if they're not learning, if they're not elevating their abilities, it doesn't matter what we do. So it really turns everything around. I think that sometimes instructors get into this rut of when they first started teaching, it's all about me.
Right.
And after going through the DREI program, it's not about me at all. It's about the people who come and want to learn from me. And so I do everything I can to make their experience best it possibly can be. And that's what I think is really cool, is honing whatever I do, whatever little bits and pieces, to try to make it even better the next time they come and take the class from me.
That's great. And I love the story you told about Gail Lyons. I had no idea about that, who, for those of you listening, she authored several books, and yes, and so that's one of the things that I appreciate about REIA, the Real Estate Educators Association, the conference, and coming, is the ability to network with people who are just, they're outstanding in their field, and that's interesting that she reached out to you, and so I think she wrote a book, and a number of years ago, Dearborn that was my very first project, was to go through and give some comments and critiques. So when you said her name, I was like, oh gosh, I remember looking at one of the books she authored, and of course she did a great job.
Well, Gail and I originally met at NER and became fast friends, and I always considered her to be probably one of the foremost experts on agency, especially at a time, in real estate where agency was going from everyone always represented the seller to also have people who are buyers brokers. And she was an absolute fount of knowledge. And I can't remember right now, unfortunately, the name of the gentleman who wrote that book with her and wrote, I think, another book with her.
Yeah, they wrote a real estate business book, or a business brokerage book too. Yeah. I believe, and that's one that I actually helped do a couple of pieces, but very interesting. So thanks for sharing. Now, last year you were member engagement for DREI, and that's why we're doing the podcast this year, because Gail did such a great job, PeggyAnn did such a great job. Gail on my mind, we're talking, but PeggyAnn did such a great job last year, and she would send out video tips to encourage and to help those of you who are candidates who have to do your video. Kind of, here's some things to remember to do, and the GATE principles. When you set out to do that, was there one that it's like, oh gosh, I got to tell people, don't forget this? Like, well, what's specific? Or I could rephrase it. What do you see instructors? There's one item like, gosh, I wish you would just change that a little bit, and it would really take your presentation.
Ooh, that's such a good question. First of all, I am a DREI video reviewer. And when I became the member engagement person, one of the things I kept thinking about is, from all my reviews of the videos that were coming in, I saw some common issues that I thought, boy, if that person would have just changed something in their slides, in their presentation, they might have gotten approved. So I tried to find videos, I tried to find mentors on YouTube, which is a wealth of knowledge as well as a wealth of garbage, that could help people. And there were a couple sections, may I maybe explain that I think that are really important. Number one, the most difficult thing for us to learn when we are going through the DREI program and continuing as a DREI is this concept of transitions. transitions from one slide to the next slide, or transition from one topic to the next topic. And there are 2 great videos out there that I put out in my emails because I thought they did a wonderful job of explaining how to do transitions. One is by a gentleman called Sandusky, Fred Sandusky, I believe his name is, who helped explain this transitions or bridging in a way that was both visual and auditory. So you could take a look at that, and he gave you clues on how to do it, whether it's from understanding the slide that you're in, knowing the slide you're going to go to, and then mentioning the thing you're going to go to within the slide you're in. So by the time you go to that next slide, you're already talking about it. So he did a wonderful job. So thinking about it as a bridge, and you have pillars on the bridge that you have to hit before you get to the other side.
Right.
So that was one big thing. The other thing is we live in a world that's no longer about words. We live in a world that went to pictures, but more importantly went to world that is now about videos. And not being afraid to use bits and pieces of a video to explain that which you are trying to get across within your presentation. A video can be used for transitions, videos can be used for further explanation, and it's also very eye-catching. I call it eye candy. Many people, when they look at the screen, and it's typically worst in pre-licensing and best in continuing education, but not perfect in either one. Our students don't deserve us to flash words on the screen, which takes their attention away from you. So many of the videos I had talked about the proper use of videos themselves. When videos don't quite suffice, using pictures. When pictures don't suffice, how can you combine a picture and maybe a couple words to be able to cement what you're trying to get across? And there's some great information out there on how to do it. I have some go-to people on the internet. For example, my favorite go-to guy is a name right now, his Chad Littlefield. Mm-hmm. Chad Littlefield does not just classroom as a speaker. He's not just virtual. He also does hybrid. And Chad has wonderful ways of being help instructors and create engagement within our students. And he does a wonderful job, and he talks about the use of videos, and he talks about the use of pictures because they elicit a response from people. And so that was one I used to stand out quite a bit because he always has something new and engaging that I think was helpful. The other thing I always recommend, especially for people who are just getting into this, is don't try to bite off the whole gate principles in one fell swoop. It doesn't work. So take one idea, whether it's dealing with students and figuring out engagement, and just concentrate on that and say, in this class, I'm going to try something new, a new way of getting my audience, my students, to be able to interact with me. Try that, see if it works. If it works, great, continue on with it. If it doesn't, say, okay, that was it, let's go to try something else. Or it may be something about the arrangement of the room. I am one of these freaky people. I don't have a school that I teach in, I travel. So whenever I travel to a place, it doesn't matter what I've said I wanted for the setup in the room. When I go in, it's never ever right. So making sure I'm going in the day before and getting things set up. I'm a big fan of use or double use in order to be able to create this idea where you step into where the students are, so the students are feeling a part of you. That's really important, and that's one of the other things that I created as a must-dos, is making sure that even before the class starts, how the room is set up is going to be so that the maximum benefit of that individual student is going to be achieved because of the way you set it up.
I'm glad you said that, because that was one item I really took away from the DREI. Now, I always got to the job site early or the day before, but I didn't understand the importance of placement of the chairs or the U-shaped room. And I was teaching recently, showed up, they had the room it was a mess. And I asked the education director, could we move this around? We put it in a U shape. She loved it. I loved it. The class was so much more engaging, and I thought to myself, I would have never known that had I not gone through the DREI program. I'd heard Mark Barker talk about it at a Missouri Real Estate Commission meeting, but when you go through the DREI and transition too, that's such a great point. I was talking to someone the other day, and for some reason I just went from one question to another, and I thought to myself, boy, that was an awkward transition in our conversation. And then I thought to myself, but as a speaker, we need to be conscious of that, because that's kind of what, if you don't plan that out, it is kind of an awkward. So great points as always.
Well, it's one of those things. Back when I was getting ready to do my first DREI video, and we had the REIA conference, or it was a DREI conference in North Carolina somewhere. After I gave a presentation, Mark Barker said, "Come over here, let me sit down and talk with you." And then he explained that everything I did in the class was great, but for one thing, my transitions were horrible. And I looked at him and I thought, what do you mean? I need to have a better explanation. And he said, go home and watch your local news and watch how the news reporters will seamlessly transition from a wonderful feel-good story to a horrible fire in a building to another feel-good story, and everything just flows beautifully. And I thought, oh my goodness, surely that can't be that simple. But I went home and did that, and I thought, oh Lord, these people do it as if there's no question or problem in the world. I've got to do that. So I started watching the local news, which, believe it or not, to that point, I hate local news. Now I watch it because I'm looking for the transitions. So that was a beautiful way of explaining, if you want to learn how to do it, watch them. Because when you're watching them, you do see how they transition. Everything seems so smooth and carefree. That's what I work on. That's still what I have to work on today, is how I'm going to plan my transitions. And it's Dana also told me another tip or trick. For example, when we've got the big slides on the screen, what Dana likes to do is over in like one little corner, he'll put a word that nobody can see, because it's a little word that he can see, that gives him a reminder of what he's going to be showing or talking about next, so that he has it on the screen, which is also a visual reminder of him of what he needs to do in order to be able to transition. I really don't care what tip or trick people take. It's just that they need to have these transitions. And then finally, one of the other videos that I used to concentrate on a lot is this aspect of thanking the person who asked the question, saying their name, repeating the question, and thanking them again. And I kept thinking about, this is nothing but having good manners and being polite. And if you can think about that, I want to have good manners and being polite. It helps you remember you need to do all that. But more importantly, what does it do for the person who's asked the question? It's made them much more comfortable.
Right.
And now they're probably going to ask another question because you thanked them, you made them feel important. Now they may be a little shy, but now they feel like they've got the confidence enough to ask another question. And that helps get more and more people willing to ask a question.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Mark Barker and I talked about that because I was at a conference in Kansas City and people were asking questions and the speaker was not repeating them, and we were on the other side of the room and we were all like, what did they ask? Yeah, so great points. Anything you want to leave us with? Thank you so much for sharing your time.
Oh, you're so sweet. This is a really big deal. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of study, but every single step you take on the journey is worth it. Not everybody who submits their first DREI video gets through. Doesn't mean it isn't worth it. Take the time to do it. There's several of us who are on the DREI review committee. I'm more than willing to review part of a DREI video to give them a sense of how they're doing. Kim Stottsberry, I know, is. But take advantage of that. We're willing to do it because we want people to succeed.
Well, and I have to tell you, my first video did not get approved, and Carol Murray called me. We had the nicest conversation. Yeah, the air was deflated a little bit, but when Carol went through the points and I rewatched the video, I said, okay, that makes total sense. I redid my video. I passed. And I was telling a lady this yesterday because she was scared about her video, and she said, did you pass the first time? And I said, no. But I said, I got to tell you something. To this day, I still remember those things Carol told me about while I'm in front of an audience. They pop through my head. And so it was a good experience for me, and it's helped me grow. So
absolutely, and that's exactly it. I encourage people to get through the process, because once they get on the other side, my goodness, the things you will have absorbed and learned, you understand that no matter how much you studied, no matter how well you did, there's still more to learn. And that's part of what I love about being an educator. Every single day I want to be better. And now I know what I need to work on in order to be able to attain that. And someday I will.
Right.
When I'm ready to retire.
Yeah, so well, good. Well, PeggyAnn, thank you so much. You're also tech savvy, because I know you were doing some really cool things with Google. And I loved what you were doing with that whole Google class environment. Are you still doing some of that? Or?
Oh, not some, all.
Okay.
I am a big user, as I say, everybody likes a different type of car. That's what I feel about the different platforms that are out there. Whether you like to Zoom, whether you like to use Teams, whether you use Google Meet, whatever it is, everybody's got the different kind of car that they drive. I am perfectly comfortable and very happy with Google products, because I'm a huge Google Classroom user. I have a Google Classroom for every single class that I teach, because I'm one of these big people on engagement, and it's not just about engagement in the middle of the class that they're taking. I have engagement prior to, during, and after. And not every single person who takes any of my classes is necessarily tech savvy enough to get into it, but everybody appreciates the opportunity to be able to take a class and take whatever is being offered in a way that they find most comfortable. And that's it. It's not about me and what I like, it's about the students and what they like. So I like to provide them all the opportunities to get it whatever way they can.
Great. Thank you so much, PeggyAnn. My last question, just for fun, because she's from Alaska.
Yes. Do you want to come
I watch those Alaskan shows where they live way up north. Is it really like that?
Oh, Lord. It depends on which
Have
way
you ever
want.
gone up that far north, like where the Alaskan, anyway? It was just
Yes, I've actually been there. I've been to Nome. I've been to Nome in February, froze my tail off, but it's the most fascinating place you'll ever be. That's at the very, very top of the state. No, it's funny. Depending upon which show you watch, I can tell you whether or not there is any reality to it. Unfortunately, most of the reality real estate shows are all fake. Sorry about that. And the things about the guy living out in Kenai with his family, supposedly off the grid. Sorry, that's fake. Shouldn't say that out loud, but there's actually a road that gets to him. But if you've seen Ice Road Truckers,
yes,
totally real. Every step of it, and I actually have a friend now who lives in town who used to be one of those ice road truckers.
Gosh.
That's scary as all get out. Deadliest Catch. I actually know the guy who was first captain on the Deadliest Catch. He's unfortunately passed away, but that's all for real. The gold panning one that's outside of Bethel, that's totally for real. And I encourage everybody to put Alaska on their list.
Yeah, I'm going to. So, well, thank you again for sharing this information. All right.
You're welcome, John.
Thanks.